Carrie Twigg, before we drop, I know that you bought your Melania tickets. You
Oh,
bought them the
bro.
day they came out. I mean, it's really hard to find a ticket, Twig, right? Like
It's very
where
tough.
I'm
Very
sure
tough.
you're like in the front row or in the back row, right? Like there are no tickets in the DC theaters.
Can I make a really dirty confession that I am just desperate to see this movie?
Do you know what the dirty secret was at Sundance?
What?
Was that it's good. Welcome to Twig and Jenkins. We are back. I got a couple of texts and also saw some friends at Sundance that were like, "What? Where's Twig and Jenkins? What are you guys doing?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, a little hibernation stage
It's
post
true.
holidays. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot cooking on both Twig and Jenkins's respective plates, but we're
I
back.
also think we have a lot of people who are still subscribed to the old YouTube feed. So, new
We should just
YouTube
bring back
feed.
the old YouTube feed. Just bring it back,
Fair
Twig.
enough. All right. Do it. I'm
Bring
fine.
back bring back the old YouTube feed. There's so much to cover. I think probably Carrie, you and I have not even spoken just because I was out in Utah. You were jamming on huge business stuff. The secret police, the Trump Gestapo, the masked cowards that is ICE has murdered yet another innocent human, and the world is watching. America was watching, and I haven't seen everyday Americans this worked up about our government and about what it means to be a neighbor, what it means to be someone in community in a very long time. And all of this happened when I was in Park City, Utah. Because when you think about community, you really
Celebrating
think
cinema.
when you think about raw activism and community building, the first thought that comes to mind, of course, is Park City, Utah. But
Mhm.
where were you, Twig, when this all went down?
I've been here, man. I've been here
Yeah,
in the storm, kind of hunkered down, as you said, trying to put a couple pieces into motion to help us sort of think through how we can be using culture to respond to this moment.
yeah,
I mean, I think we've said it so many times. We're in a cultural civil war at this point, and we are not leveraging all the cultural tactics we have at our disposal. And so I think that's in part an education issue. People don't know how to actually use the levers of culture, and then also a kind of vision issue where people don't feel confident that it could work, but it's like we have to pull every single lever we possibly can and get going. And so I'm sort of head down trying to instigate some uh forward momentum on the ways that we can use culture to address this moment and start building a cultural firewall against some of this shit.
couldn't agree more. We talked about this on our last pod, but I think that the beautiful thing that's happening is that really what we're seeing is that everyday people are leading culture, especially as it relates to digital culture, um, and the narrative coming out of what has been taking place, the sort of Stephen Miller ethnostate, the MAGA ethnostate that Stephen Miller has been trying to enact through policy, huge backfire, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, look, law enforcement and security, regardless of how Democrats or leftists or progressives feel about it, always poll high. People like, especially independents, like safe streets, safe neighborhoods, and by and large, respect and defend law enforcement when asked in polls how they feel about law enforcement. Um, ICE is tanking. It's the worst poll that they've ever received. 67% of independents disagree with what ICE is doing and also what it stands for. And this Stephen Miller strategy, which I think by and large has worked, Twig, I don't know if you agree. I think that they've really been able to define their agenda, their sort of view on law and order, um, through demonization of immigrants, through Trump calling entire communities shithole communities, through kind of riling up their base, and it's not working. And so I think you sent over some interesting visuals, right? Like I think you called them visuals, but I think a lot of the reasons why it's not working is because what is coming out of Minneapolis and Minnesota is, in a way, culture and storytelling. Like people are able to
Oh,
now visually see the battle lines are drawn, right? And when you are able to see the images of what's taking place in Minneapolis, it becomes very clear what side you should be on, and
100%.
it's clear um, that's it's very hard. As much as we talk about the right wing media machine, it's very hard to tell people not to believe their eyes. You know?
Yeah, difficult, but not impossible, and they're certainly making an attempt to do it. I mean, I think that they went into Minneapolis thinking that they would be able to get the kind of visual output that we saw them get out of places like Chicago, right? Which is you have these heroes, Rambo style, rappelling into buildings, taking out dudes with brown men with no shirts, tattoos all over their bodies and on their faces that look like they are untrustworthy or like they would be criminals, right? Because of the way our mass media has portrayed Black men, men of color, Latino men, gang members, all of that type of imagery already exists in our mind. And the Trump administration has been really good at leveraging those sort of inherent biases to create a narrative. In this instance, so much imagery has come out that has completely subverted that attempt. And so they know they're incredibly astute, right? Evil, terrible, but also astute. And so that is why we've seen these limited and kind of conditional withdrawals and backpedaling on the part of Trump and some of his um lackeys, so to speak. And we haven't seen that in other places. The only other time Trump has really retreated is when the markets have startled and scared them, but they
Yeah.
are seeing the same numbers we are. And when you see pictures of a little boy in a cute little hat used as bait to attack his mother, when you have visuals of um, doctors and nurses and people who are typically not politicized in our culture being appalled and opposed to what the administration is doing. When you see other forms of law enforcement, your sort of on the beat cops, firefighters,
Yes.
sheriffs being like, what is going on? And being literally positioned against ICE.
Yes.
And then on top of that, just the mass numbers of Minnesotans that are in the street in -10-degree weather. All of that is creating a total counterweight and a cultural firewall to what we're seeing out of ICE. And so we've been able to sort of organically hijack their media narrative, their visual narrative of these ICE figures as heroes. And that is incredibly, incredibly important. And I want us to be using this as a case study about things we can start doing on purpose. Because here's the thing, this organic eruption of sort of a counter visual narrative is incredibly, incredibly valuable. But if we don't have the infrastructure that says, okay, who's turning that into a poster? Who's turning that into a 15-second ad?
Yeah.
Who is dropping that in? Who is on the ground capturing footage, turning it into a doc that we can be quickly turning around in the course of a week? Those are all incredibly important. We need to make cultural products out
Yep.
of the organic visuals that are coming out of these moments. And then I would also add that, like, in addition to taking the narrative and subverting the narrative that the Trump administration is also pushing, it is simultaneously subverting the narrative that Democrats are spineless and weak, right? Or that the left is spineless and weak. Because I mean, Ilhan Omar gets some dude with a syringe, gross, tries to attack her. I mean, she pulls her fist. She's about to swing on this dude, right? You have the left in the street being forceful, saying, "You wanna bring violence? Like, we'll bring violence. Like, okay, but you're not gonna push me around." And so that in itself is a different visual narrative that we can be, amplifying, putting some scaffold and structuring around to advance, to not only make our base feel more able to tap into their bravery, but also to put the other side on notice that there are enough of us that aren't gonna be pushed around.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's been, a huge win. I think you're completely right for not only um local community members, local organizers. Um, I feel like so many of the videos, the home videos or iPhone videos of just like soccer moms and Subarus, right? Just like
Totally.
tracking ICE agents. The courage, I think, of everyday people has that courage has found its way into the spine of some of our Democratic political leaders. So God bless. I think we saw um, Senate Democrats actually find their balls and oppose just uh, passing the funding bill at existing levels. They did immediately, though. I think the next day or 2 days later, find a resolution. Schumer had a compromise deal that strips out the DHS funding to avoid a partial government shutdown. Um, it sounds as if they are going to continue to debate the merits of the DHS funding bill. The language abolish ICE is nowhere to be seen from our boy Chuck, but it does seem to be an interesting moment, Carrie Twigg, on, this collective amnesia that I think Democrats had because law enforcement and because border security and all of these things, again, poll well with independents. Um, this is not a surprise for anyone who's a leftist, but there have been activists calling for ICE to be abolished for over a decade, right?
Over a decade.
Over a decade, people have been calling for ICE to be abolished. ICE has only been around for 20 some years, 22 years, right? Like this is a brand new agency, as our homie Anu Joshi from the ACLU walked us through. This is all new, right? And if you think about the kind of spinelessness and the cowardice of our Democratic leaders, like think about how Trump and Miller destroyed USAID. They abolished USAID in 40 some days, an agency that has been around since the early 60s, an agency, speaking of funding, that actually funded tens of billions of dollars to the developing world, saved hundreds of thousands of lives per year. Do you know what Republicans did, Twig? They fucking abolished USAID, right? And the fact that Democrats, whenever an activist and organizer would use that language, to use language to a bullshit Gestapo lawless secret police, that we should get the fuck rid of it, they would say, no, 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 you're going to hurt our chances at winning elections. No, no, no. Right? Like this becomes I think, again, this just becomes a flashpoint for activists, organizers, for people who've been talking about this for so many years. When Americans can see with their own eyes what ICE actually is, and that Democrats have not been fighting to shut this shit down,
Yeah.
right? This is all good, right? Like this is good. Obviously murders and deaths are not good. But what I mean to say is it's good that, again, community members through culture are leading. And now our Democratic leaders are listening. Now I've seen multiple Democratic members of Congress, multiple Democratic senators posting carousels about abolishing ICE. You know what I mean? Like, this is now like tipped over into the mainstream. And, anyway,
but here's the thing. Yeah, because here's the thing. It's like, again, this has been going on since January of last year, right? I was living in LA when ICE started massive raids across LA. We had ICE doing massive raids here in DC, right? We have them in Minnesota. We know that they've been gearing up to go to Ohio. They're about to start harassing Haitians in Ohio. We know that they've threatened to go into Chicago. They've been in Portland. They still have presence in Portland. They're starting to ramp up operations against Cubans in Florida. There's talk of them showing up in Philly, right? So we know that Minneapolis is not the last stop on this train and on this tour. And the fact is, like, what are we building so that we can replicate the results of what works and apply them to the next place this is going to happen? Right? Like, we have enough data, we have the know-how, we have the technology, and we know how this is going to go. Even the mayor and the governor of Minnesota and Minneapolis, respectively, or the other way around, They knew in advance. They were like, somebody's going to die. Wes Moore was on the press box this week saying the National Governors Association, not a nonpartisan collection of governors, said if ICE continues in this way, there are going to be fatalities. And of course,
Yes.
there were. This is entirely predictable. And in these circumstances, we have to ask ourselves, okay, so if past is precedent, if this is entirely predictable,
Yeah.
why are we flat-footed? What if ICE is starting to deploy tanks and roll them through Columbus, Ohio, which they are doing,
Yes.
then how are we on the ground starting to think about the ways that we are going to narratively address this moment? In
I couldn't.
addition to the legal
Yes.
framework, in addition to the congressional framework, in addition to
Yes.
all the things that need to happen on the political level, we
Yes.
have to be applying the same rigor to the media narrative that's unfolding around all of this.
Yes. And then I think we also have to, this is a huge shout out to a friend, Julia Yaffe, who's just one of my favorite writers and humans. And we've known Julia for years. She's been doing these incredible breakdowns of how, every single thing that's happening. Yes, this is about Stephen Miller's ultimate ethnostate, white supremacy, MAGA bullshit. But ultimately, all of this is political. Ultimately, all of this is about power. And what Trump and Miller are doing are going into blue cities and
Yeah.
creating chaos. They're going into blue cities, sowing seeds of fucking discontent, violence, hoping for the ability to take over, which is what was attempted in Minnesota when you had ICE agents outnumber law enforcement 10 to 1, right? Like, this is what is happening, and this is going to be a playbook. You know, Trump and his cronies are not in red states, they're in blue states, right? They're not in blue cities in red states. They are in, by and large, blue states. You're right. They're going to go to Ohio. Um, they're going to
What they're
go to
doing in
places.
Florida,
They've been
what
in
they're doing.
Florida. This is true, but a primary objective is to really break the back and break the spirit of blue cities, and to also, which is a great segue into what's happening on the political side. Elections are right around the corner, Carrie Twigg, and
Wow.
you can guarantee that these motherfuckers are going to do every single thing that they can to retain power. And that starts with what's happening in Fulton County. You just sent over some notes. I've not been tracking that as much, Twig, so I'd love to hear the breakdown because I think that this just leaked yesterday. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. What is time, you know? But I mean, like this is this is this the thing that's underpinning all of this is the fact that we have a decentralized election system in this country, right? States run their own elections. We have 50 different election processes in the United States, which actually makes it incredibly difficult to manipulate on a national level. Not impossible, but incredibly difficult. Federal government has limited access to data about voting rolls in states because, again, it's a state process, not a federal process. And so the federal government has to request this information. States can deny that request. We saw in Minneapolis, just to put a bow around Minnesota, that the DOJ asked, in exchange for the removal of ICE, for access to the voting data and the voting records. At the same time, Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, which has long been a crawl in the president's side, has once again gotten his attention. This week, the FBI executed a search warrant at the Fulton County Election Hub and Operations Center and sought to, open quotes, saw a number of records related to the 2020 elections, right? The county posted this. They immediately went public with it. This is a site of a lot of lawsuits. This is a site of where President Trump was calling, trying to get votes overturned, trying to get Democratic votes to not be counted. It's sort of ground zero for Trump's attempt to manipulate the 2020 election. And they want all the voter rolls, tabulator tapes, every voting machine that's used. Again, Donald Trump is attempting to completely invalidate the elections process in the United States. And he's going to use every single lever he possibly can in order to do that. This is about him. He's years deep into a media campaign to wage war against validity of elections in America. And no matter what happens, whether Democrats win the election, whether the election goes on, whether they call in the Insurrection Act and say no more elections, whether the elections go on, if Democrats win, he's going to say that they did not. No matter what, do not for 1 second think that Donald Trump would respect an election. We have no proof of this whatsoever. And so this is an incredibly important. All of this terrorism that we're watching happen, especially in blue states, is directly tied to the federal government, the Trump administration's ability to access voting data and therefore manipulate or undermine voting systems in democratic states. And so, one of the things, again, I'm going to be preaching from this gospel until the need is no longer necessary. But we have got to immediately build a cultural firewall around elections, like immediately. It feels incredibly obvious that they are building a preemptive case against the legitimacy of elections in America because they are going to lose the midterms and they know that. So even if we win, they won't seat a Democratic Congress. And we know that we need to be preparing for that. And so that can look like a lot of different things. We obviously need a massive litigation strategy. We need to massively fund at scale election protection. But at the same time, we need to start like today making the case to the American public that they have a right to an election, that our election systems are actually legitimate and incredibly well sounded. We need to bolster the fact that there is very little fraud. We need to make a emotional case that a core part of being an American means voting anytime you want and every single year, right? And if I had my druthers, I would immediately be in production with 10 to 15, maybe even 20 types of documentaries and shows of different styles, different genres, different formats that start unpacking like the Dominion voting systems versus Fox News case, tracks Trump's total lack of understanding of elections and all the ways that he's attempted to subvert them, like pop culture takes on how Americans love voting, whether it's from, and we're obsessed with voting, whether it's from American Idol, Survivor, also connecting that to elections, right? And flood connected TVs, social, YouTube, any other distribution platform we can get our hands on with a massive content push, giving general audiences an emotional connection and language for why voting matters. And it is, in fact, a legitimate process in America, and that we do elections kind of better than anywhere else in the world. And we should be 6 months into that work. We should be 5 years into that work, but we're not. So, like, but we got to start that now because they are so far down the road in trying to convince Americans that whatever they see is not going to be true. And whoever they voted for, they are the only one. And that Democrats are going to try and steal this. And it's just like, we need to get on it because they are coming so hard for these elections and they're pulling every lever they have. They have the power of the entire federal government at their
Yeah.
back. And we're just sort of sitting here on our thumbs.
Yes, I couldn't agree more on the culture side. I think it becomes tricky. On the litigation side, I will say my wife's day job, I mean, looking at the litigation and the voter protection and also all of the work around these upcoming midterms. And it's like, speaking of like who are the heroes right now, it's the fucking lawyers because,
Totally.
win after win after win of ensuring that a lot of these tactics that they've been trying have been in the courts of subverting and retaining power, and they've lost. So that's good. So I do feel good, very good about our bases being covered on the litigation side. But you're right on the cultural side. And it's an interesting thing, right, Twig? Because I feel like you and I have been on the side of this on messaging and get out the vote, right? Content and strategy. And there's so much to be read and written about and polling that kind of gets incorporated into like, what is the right messaging around voting? And one of the things, ironically, that was always at least told to me, this is like way back when, this actually goes back to 2008, right? So I'm going to date myself. I was a part of the youth media, the sort of youth vote media strategy in 2008 for Barack Obama. We actually Mafo, Chris Hughes, Jason Green, a number of us were special projects on Youth Vote. We had actually solicited a bunch of agencies to lay out their plan of how they were going to like operationalize all of this culture, organic culture that was happening, right? You had the Shep Ferry poster, you had our homie Yossi in LA just getting like every artist and streetwear person like involved in the campaign. It's like, okay, but like what is the actual content strategy in physical form, right? Like in on college campuses, in urban and rural areas, and also just the overall look and feel. So we actually got to look at, we got like 6 proposals from like the biggest ad agencies in the world, right? Like fucking Wyden and Kennedy and all these agencies. And we went with a smaller agency called SS&K, led by this guy Rob Shepardson. And the major reason why SS&K won is because they were pulling from what was already happening. Like so much of their strategy was, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to ride the wave of everything that's happening. But it's interesting because I read so many briefs and primers and all these things around the sort of science of voting, motivation of like young people voting. And one of the consistent themes, not just in 2008, but as early as like even just like this past cycle when we spoke to clients, one of the things, Carrie Twigg, that they say you should never do is talk about how hard it is to vote or to talk about how the other side is trying to make it difficult to vote or trying to suppress the vote. Because there is just this like institutional, and I don't know who's to say if it's real or not, but it's just this like accepted fact among get out the vote practitioners that it's so hard to get young people to vote. It's so hard to get sporadics to vote. It's so hard to get people of color in some communities to vote that if you talk about barriers or obstacles to vote and you get into the minutia of like, they're not going to count your vote or they're trying to take away your right to vote, then that becomes like, oh, well, then I'm not going to vote. Right? Like, this is too much. Like, oh, fuck that. I'm not going to vote. And so it's interesting because this happened especially during like COVID, right? Like during COVID, the opposite happened, right? Where because of the extenuating circumstances of the pandemic, it became easier for people to vote than ever before. And what happened? More people voted during COVID than in any election ever, 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 ever. More people voted for Joe Biden that election than anyone had ever voted for anyone in history because we talked about how easy it is to vote. You can mail your vote. You
I'm
can
not
do this.
100%
You can
sure
do
that's
that.
the only causality, though.
Well, it's not the good point. It's not the only causality, but voting periods were extended, right? I mean, there's also a certain logic to this, right? If you live in Maricopa, Arizona, it is actually hard to vote. There are lines that you have to stand in, right? Like there are, they, because of the gutting of Shelby, like they cut down, right? Like voting hours. They cut down early vote. They cut down polling locations in Black and brown communities. And so it just is harder to vote, right? In some areas of the country. And so what you found in the COVID election was this outpouring of voting. What you're finding right now with Republicans is this dynamic. This is, we're totally kind of going off topic here, but I'm curious what you think in your project around talking about voting, which is by and large, Republicans have always been the voter suppressor party, right? Like up until probably very recently, they have always tried to, Republican legislators at the state and federal level have tried to minimize the ability for people to vote because their thought is the status quo is, you know, retains our power. And if you allow anyone to vote, that anyone, quote unquote, are people who tend to vote Democratic. But this past election, a lot of the people that came off the sidelines to vote for Donald Trump were those sporadic voters, were people who, again, we've talked about this with the right-wing ecosystem and Rogan and all these guys. A lot of people were voting in elections that had not voted in like 10 years, 20 years. And so a lot of that sort of like science, to your point around like, how are we girding up America for these upcoming midterms? And then even more importantly, I think, Donald Trump has already laid the groundwork for saying, why should we even have an election? This is a direct quote from Donald Trump. He was like, quote unquote, kidding, but like, why should he even have an election for president again? And so I don't know if you're factoring into or have thoughts on any of these things, but it's the kind of what's it called? It's the kind of like barriers or policy polling bullshit sometimes that people like me, practitioners on Get Out the Vote, have to sort of wade through and figure out, like, in this era of 2026, is any of this shit relevant anymore? Do you know what I mean? Because I can guarantee you that Donald Trump does not read the fucking briefing books that the
They're
Democratic Party is reading about how to motivate voters to vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also think, and I remember those studies, like and
Yeah.
I was a part of, I was still doing campaign work. I was a part of campaign when Republicans in Ohio were instituting voter ID laws
Yes.
and all sorts of things. That's been going on. But here's the thing, that's been a 25-year project to get us to where we are today,
True.
right? The threat has never been more real. I think there is a fundamental difference when when you're the canary in the coal mine 20 years ago, trying to be like, hey, they're trying to restrict you, when what they were doing actually felt relatively common sense. For most people, it was like, you have to show your ID. And they were like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, whatever. I have to show my ID to do all sorts of stuff. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
When you are calling off elections, it is a different ask to make people stand in line for a few extra hours.
Yep.
Like it's a totally different threshold of threat. And so I think that there are probably people for whom are going to be disincentivized. Like, you can't get everyone to do everything. That's why instead of one project, we need like 15, 20 projects of
Agreed.
different tones, different genres, making different arguments
Yeah.
that can work for different audiences. But I do think that we are at such a fundamentally different point, and that there is so much evidence that people can see with their eyes. And there's video of the president saying, you don't need to do an election anymore. We didn't have that last time.
True.
We didn't
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally different reality than it was when people are saying, don't talk about how difficult it is to vote, which I understood at the time, sort
Yeah.
of, and I do get, but like, we are in a different situation.
Agreed.
And if the people come out and say, the scientists say that like that's still intact, fine, then we'll use a different narrative structure. It's not that difficult. The point I'm making, whether that what I don't care what the message is, so long as we are putting forward a conversation and we are
Yeah.
not dictating what the narrative is. And that's the problem that I'm trying to call out. More, I like, you tell me what message will be effective. I'm
Sure.
happy to use it. I don't care. I personally am agnostic. What is going to work to undermine this, and while also motivating our people? Happy to use it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we need distribution, we need platforms to advance that message, and we need to be doing it every single day, and we're not.
Yep. I agree. I think the one good thing, right, about this moment is I think it's really hard for virtually any American right now to not understand the stakes. And granted, it's January 30th, and these midterm elections are, a year away, right? But
Not
um,
quite, not quite.
not
10 months,
quite.
baby.
10 months, Twig.
It's
Um,
February. It's basically February.
it's basically February. And the primaries are right around the corner, right? We've got really hotly contested primaries a couple of months away, 2, 3 months away. Um, but folks understand the urgency. Folks know what's at stake. And I do expect, you're right, I do expect that there's going to be some real fucking dirty shit that's happening on the Republican side with these voting machines, and also just the misinformation game, right? What's most important is that we have lots of different voices, we have lots of different strategies, and I guess what I was sort of getting at is like, I think that as we think about traditional get out the vote content, which is like, I think you can put that, for me, I almost put that in like a bucket. And I've seen every iteration and version of get out the vote content, right, in the past, however many years, 20 years. Um, I think that we have to sort of almost reinvent what get out the vote content looks like.
Oh, totally.
And it's become so stale. And it's become so almost cliche at this point. And we know, to your point, that there's so many other forms of content. It's not just short digital pieces, right? It's everything. It's live, it's music, it's long form, it's documentary style. It's influencer driven stuff, but here's the thing about influencer driven stuff. I put this in our outline. The most important influencers, a study just was came out in a really great piece by Wired magazine last month about how the most influential influencers when it comes to politics are influencers that do not talk about politics.
Yep. Yep.
And that is the thing that the Democratic Party and the DNC and our friends from the Biden and Kamala campaign completely fucking missed. Completely missed. Because you and I, Twig, we were a part of that cadre of people at the convention, the sort of like signal chats and the WhatsApp chains and all of these political influencers. And you know what? Those are not the people that resonate. Those were not the people persuading and independents and people that are first time sporadic voters. All of those people, God bless them. And I would include you and I in this group of people. We are obviously political people. But those are not the people that actually motivate sporadics and young people to vote. It's the people that
No.
don't talk about politics that do it, that sort of
Well,
shift, it's the Portnoys, right?
totally.
It's the Rogans in a way. Is not a political person. Rogan is fucking whatever, right?
Well,
It's
and
people.
remember Hassan was there and they kicked him out.
Exactly. Exactly. So again, like these are the conversations when it comes to culture that the folks at the DNC is a fucking mess right now, Carrie Twigg. The number of conversations at Sundance about the internal squabbling, the lack of funding, the bank, they're practically in the red, trying to crawl their way out of debt, all the overpromises that Ken Martin did during the
Oof.
DNC chair campaign, none of it is coming through fruition. DNC state leads are pissed because they don't have any money. It's just an overall shit show, right? And in my heart of hearts, I know that they like the conversation you and I are having about culture. That's like the 10th thing on their agenda right now. Like they don't have the wherewithal to figure this shit out. Like this has to come from outside of the party, but it has to come. This is the one thing I will say about this year, right? As someone who has been a Bernie bro, as someone who loves to talk shit about the Democratic Party each and every day, much to my wife's chagrin. Um, yes, this has to happen outside of the Democratic Party, but we have to be thinking about helping the Democratic Party each and every step of the way. They're not going to be able to.
Ooh,
They're
hot
not going to be able
take.
to do this. They're not going to be able to do this alone.
Yeah.
Like one of the projects I think you should include in that sort of like narrative voting culture is I think that there should be real creatives. And what by real creatives, I mean like real Hollywood producers and directors to take up the mantle of doing the Democratic messaging for the Democratic Party. Just like create an Instagram account that says what the Democratic Party should be telling the people, right? Like what the Democratic Party,
Here's
what
the
its content
problem though.
should
Do
be.
you know how many
You know?
people have offered that? Do you
Exactly.
know how many people have offered the party that?
Exactly. Well, but
I,
here's the thing, Twig. Here's what I would say to those people right now. Just do it. Just do it.
yeah.
Don't wait
But
for
then
the
you're
Democratic
operating
Party.
outside of the but then you're operating outside of the party.
It's
So I mean,
okay
I
though.
totally hear you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I don't disagree. It's just like
It's like
part of the part
what is Kugler and Chloe Zhao and these folks going to learn from our homies Ken Martin and Roger Lau about the Democratic Party that they aren't otherwise going to know? Do you know what I mean? Like I think that there is something that if it just happens outside and it's just out there, it's just culture, it's just content. You know what I mean? I feel like, yes, it may ruffle some feathers. Like, yeah, maybe they're not totally on message with the Democratic Party.
yeah,
All
don't
the
ask Bo and Yang if you think this is a good idea.
fuck yeah, let's get them in here. Let's go. But I do think that there should just be more people being proactive. I mean, much like the soccer moms, right? Like we talk about the courage and the brilliance and beauty of the soccer moms in Minneapolis, just fucking out there following ICE agents around, filming. If you are a creative and you're upset that the Democratic Party is not delivering creative in the way that you think that they should be doing it, then just fucking do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just go fucking do it. Like, this is the moment where we can't ask for permission. The permission structure is dead, right? Like, there are no leaders. We're a leaderless party. And so let's just fucking go do it. And there are going to be people that probably fuck up. Like, this happens all the time. I mean, this happened during the Obama years too, right? Where it's like someone will put something out and I'm like, ooh, man, that's like not the ideal messaging. But I'm like, you know what? That's fine. You know, like, go for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, just an idea
But
to
here's
throw
the thing. But
in your arsenal there, Twig.
But here's the thing, to the point that you were just making about the Wired article, it's
Yeah,
like I completely agree that the Democratic Party has to learn how to figure out how to communicate with people in the ways that people want to be communicated with. Right
yeah,
now, they have done a
yeah,
really bad job, despite all the offers of help so many people have made publicly and privately. They insisted on not listening to that advice and not bringing in professionals, right? And so they spent a bunch of money on a daily show that no one watched and then ended up folding it. We haven't seen, I mean, we've seen bungle after bungle on of like PR and public messaging. And again, not to dump on the party, I do actually agree with you. And yet at the same time, Ryan Coogler is more effective if he just becomes one of the best directors in the world and
true.
then drops a conversation, drops something at good timing. You know
Yes,
what I mean? To your point about the Wired article, the most effective political influencers are people who exist primarily in a cultural context and don't talk about politics all that much. So if
agreed,
you're famous and you have a platform, keep doing your thing. Don't even worry about it. Don't come and try and save the Democratic Party because there's no point right now.
agreed,
You're not going to be like welcomed in like the hero you should be. So you just keep making your art and doing your thing. And then when the time comes, it would be great if you could offer a little bit of support. But like, I think that the Democratic Party still has a little further to go to hit rock bottom, as shocking as that might be to say, before it actually starts to rebuild itself in a way that it has like is some sincerity for the moment. And
yeah,
that's really easy for me to say as an outsider, but the bungling of this autopsy, like this
yes,
whole thing, it's just like you guys aren't serious yet. You
they're
have
not.
not learned the lesson of what's happening. And so I actually don't think that's the place for us to put resources.
Agreed.
Maybe I'll throw a bone and like quit dogging it so bad. But I don't I have yet to be convinced that there is a viable product there that they have to offer.
I agree with that. I will give their digital team some kudos. I think that they're, especially on Instagram, it's been like a 180. And ironically, it's been a 180 since Zoran Mamdani has won the election and stole the hearts of every Democrat in America. But it's just much better content. It's provocative. They're taking the pages out of our boy Gav and others. They're being, they're actually
Yeah.
using the language of people on the internet, which is all well and good. But you're right. Like, we're so far behind, and we can't. The challenge for me though is there's two things that when I think about these upcoming midterms, right? You have, on one side, you're going to have really competitive primaries, and they're already getting chippy and ugly. We saw what's happening with Jasmine and Tolerico in Texas, leaked reports of billionaires calling for Jasmine to get dirty with Tolerico. And then you have all of these other primaries, many of whom friends of Carrie and I are actually running in, that are going to get hot and contested on issues like Gaza and Palestine, and issues like APAC, and issues like, things that are going to be a little heated. Um, the Democratic Party, and maybe this is a good segue to my last piece, which is sort of where we're all sort of gathering at, which is interesting, is you're right. Like, it's actually not at rock bottom, but I think about that all the time, and I think about what happened this past week with non-political influencers, right? Being sort of like either shamed or just peer pressured into talking about what's happening in Minneapolis. And then the response to said people by really funny comedians and other folks who are a lot more online making fun of these kind of like non-political influencers for being out there and talking. And I almost view that version, that dynamic, when it comes to get out the vote time, when like people who never say anything positive about the Democratic Party, like 1 week before the election, they're like wearing a Democratic Party t-shirt, and you're like, where the fuck did this come from? You have not been talking positively about the Democratic Party any day of the week. Why are we to believe you? Name a celebrity, right? Like Billie Eilish called out her brethren, her celebrity brethren, for not speaking out about what happened in Minneapolis. And it's like, speaking of like Twig, your favorite, what is your favorite saying? Like, you gotta build the well, right?
Dig
Like,
the well before you're thirsty.
you gotta dig the well before it's thirsty. And this is one project that I think you should add to your arsenal is like, we actually do need, as much as the Democratic Party does not agree with me on this, because I've been telling them this for over a decade, like a rebrand of the Democratic Party that fucking includes people being proud to be a Democrat. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know who is. There are people who are proud to be Democrats. Many of them are those incredible soccer moms out there in Minneapolis. But culturally, right? Like it's this thing where we pretend people, especially like people who are movers and shakers and people that people admire, no one's ever going to say, I am proudly a Democrat until a week before the election. And then everyone's like, bullshit, you're not a Democrat. So that is just something on January 30th, you know what I mean, Twig, that I think that that should be a project that maybe Twigg and Jenkins should take on
Man, they
behalf.
got to give us something to be proud of as a party.
Exactly. But there are people like Zoran Mamdani, right? There are people
Who's a Democratic Socialist, by the way,
still a Democrat,
and who did not have the support of the party, by the way.
still a
So,
Democrat,
like, but so honestly, it's sort of I,
still a Democrat.
I understand. I do understand, and I don't totally disagree. However, there is a lot of work that the Democratic Party needs to do in order to make that rebrand not totally hollow.
100%.
Audiences are actually quite sophisticated. And right
100%.
now, the reason why you see the drop in a weekend before is because people are either A, holding their nose
Yeah.
and picking the Democratic candidate, or they are just like, and I don't even think that people are coming out and being like, I'm a proud Democrat. They're saying, I'm voting for Kamala, or I'm voting for Biden, or I'm voting for this individual.
Great point.
They're not coming out and being like, I'm a Democrat. Like, that's not the thing. And there's a reason for that.
There is.
And so I don't disagree that the party needs a rebrand, but it also needs action that is in alignment with what that brand says its values are.
I couldn't agree more. Here's the last thing I'll say on that though. That's a very good point. And if there's ever going to be a moment where you can actually get some really fucking like brilliant, innovative, inspiring, fucking like shake you to your core, different shit content coming out of people who believe themselves to be Democrats, it's these midterm elections. You know what I mean? There's so many incredible people running. And like that is the way you ladder up, right? It's less about I'm a Democrat, but it's more about telling the stories of these incredible humans who are fucking way better than the Republican alternative. And guess what? These people are fucking Democrats, you know? And I think that there is a sort of like Ocean's 11. I love that photo series. I think Vanity Fair did this really dope photo series of like the top young candidates in America. And they shot them. Did you see this thing where they just shot them in their like environment? So you had like Tallarico like in the football stands, right, in Texas, and you had folks like in their it almost felt like Avenger style. Like this is their home. Like we need more of that shit. right?
I don't disagree. Yeah,
And
totally agree
and
with
I
that.
think that that is the way you ladder up to people actually feeling positive about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that's a very fair point. I just don't think that comes from Ken Martin and
no,
D with a circle around it
no,
right
no, no.
now.
It comes from Carrie Twigg and Brad Jenkins. Carrie Twigg, before we drop, I know that you bought your Melania tickets. You
Oh,
bought them the
bro.
day they came out. I mean, it's really hard to find a ticket, Twigg, right? Like
It's very
where
tough.
I'm
Very
sure
tough.
you're like in the front row or in the back row, right? Like there are no tickets in the DC theaters.
Can I make a really dirty confession that I am just desperate to see this movie?
Do you know what the dirty secret was at Sundance?
What?
Was that it's good.
Of course it's good.
Yeah, it's actually
Of course it's good.
someone saw it. I will not be named too. A producer saw it and was like, "It's actually pretty good." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Yeah,
of course it
probably it's
is.
pretty good."
Brett Ratner is a sex pest, but he knows how to make a film.
He knows
He's
how
a
to make.
good filmmaker.
It's true.
And Melania is captivating and she's gorgeous and she's fun to watch. And I bet she's like, her
Well,
world is rarefied and
exactly.
interesting. And
I think
like,
it's
I
palace
people
intrigue.
love
Yeah,
to watch that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I love to watch that kind of stuff.
You
Like,
know
I
who doesn't
can't
love to watch that kind of stuff?
wait to watch it.
You know who
Who?
doesn't like that kind of stuff, though, apparently?
Who?
All of America. 'Cause this film, what a mistake. Oh my
Well,
God. This,
I think it's a it's a principled stand. B, this is gonna cost Amazon $100 million, which is absolutely nothing to them. This for what they're gonna get in exchange.
true.
B, 1, 2, 3, 3, it is gonna sell. People are gonna watch it. A, we don't have a strong theatrical documentaries do not do well in theaters anyway, right?
True.
So the tracking for this doc is about 5 million, which is really high for a documentary anyway. To even get this wide of like a global release for a documentary is like unheard of. And it's gonna do fine. It's probably gonna beat the tracking. It's probably gonna do several
You think
million at
it's
the
gonna,
box office
but here's what's gonna happen.
because
I
the
don't,
tickets are selling in the places that support him.
right. That's right.
There are
But
so many places that it is going to sell tickets. It's not going to sell tickets in Paris and London and DC, but it's going to sell tickets in Knoxville and in Atlanta and in suburbs and Oklahoma and absolutely. And then I bet it will do numbers on streaming. I mean, listen, I'm going to watch it. I feel like it's my moral responsibility as a political content maker and narrative expert, but also, I bet him because it's gonna be good. People are gonna watch it.
here's my take on it. I agree with some of that, but my big thing on all of it was I think this was a huge mistake to put it in theaters in this wide of a release because all they had to do, Twig, was just put it on streaming and just talk about the streaming numbers and like talk about how it was a huge hit on streaming. But what you have now is the internet, and the internet which also like folds into my parents' internet. Like my parents even said like, oh wow, I guess no one is, my parents who are huge Melania fans were like, oh, I guess no one wants to watch this Melania documentary because of the sheer number of theaters that it's actually in and the small number of people who are actually going to see the film. There might be like a historic bombing language that people can use, like the number of theaters to the number of people that actually watch this film. And it goes to show you, I mean, this is the thing, right? Where people get convinced that there are more Republicans than there actually are. Because you see those maps, right? I'm thinking of the red and blue maps of like, it looks like it's all red because that's where Trump won all of these states. And it's like, nah, homie, that all of that red, there are no people there, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are no people in Wyoming. There are no people in these places. And
But
so
honestly, watch them release. Watch them be like, it breaks streaming
that's a good
records.
point.
Like
I
it
think that that's probably
that
what's going to
headline,
happen.
the empty theaters in Paris and New York,
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
headline's gonna last for a week, and then
Right.
people are gonna watch it at home.
That's a good point. That's true. I
And
just
that's what
feel
she wanted. She doesn't care. She wanted a global release. She
right.
wanted the fanfare. It's doing tons of press. She wanted her face on the sphere. She wanted the global marketing campaign that accompanies a theatrical release at that scale. And
Yeah,
that is going to pay dividends for her, whether people saw the movie or not,
right. Good point. And whether people make fun of her or not, which is the other thing, which
which they're already doing.
I don't think Trump likes, right? Which is to say, I've never seen so many Truth Social posts like begging people to go watch go watch a movie that his wife
Apparently, a
is
bunch of them were
starring in.
fake, though. Apparently, there were a bunch of fake ones with Trump saying
Oh, is
that
that right?
Melania would be mandatory viewing in all high school curriculums. No,
Incredible.
I mean, listen, if the Trumps teach us anything, it's that shamelessness doesn't matter.
Very good point.
So, or that
Very good.
shamelessness is a winning strategy. And so I don't think she gives a damn if people make fun of her. I don't think she gives a damn whether or not people actually see the movie. It's not even about that. It's not about people watching 90 minutes of her. It's about people seeing her global takeover on billboards and headlines. Like that's
That's
how
a
you
good point.
become famous.
Yeah.
You don't have to actually have done anything. You have to make these meta media moments. And she just got Amazon to pay for a $50 million worldwide campaign that's just her
Insane.
name and an Ellen von Uwerth iconic photo. She won. She already won.
I don't know if she won one, but I get your point.
In
I
the
get
in
your
the
point.
shallowness of the world we live in that isn't based on reality or
Yeah.
fact, but is based on perception of reality, she won.
Yeah. I get it. Carrie Twigg, it's so good to see your
It's been
face. I
real,
missed
man.
you at
I
Sundance. You would have
know.
loved this Sundance, Twig,
I
because
bet. I did get a lot of incoming about how fun it
it
was.
was
And
so fun and it was so political. I
yeah,
mean, the brutal murder happened, I think, the day that I got there. And shout out my new homies, John and Shilpa, that like people, new friends, just organized immediately. And there were multiple protests, there were multiple vigils. It was really exciting to see the community come together. And it's also, Sundance Twig. It's like you walk down, it feels almost like a movie set. Like it doesn't feel like a
yeah,
real place.
town. Yeah.
And like, so you're like walking by name famous celebrity Channing Tatum or whomever. And then you go to these vigils and they're all there, right? Like Elijah Wood is there and fucking Olivia Wilde and Tasha Leone and like
Yeah.
all these people are there and it feels, it felt good. It felt good to see um almost every single celebrity. If you were to Google right now, like celebrity speaking out on ice, all of the articles are about Sundance.
Yeah.
Because what ended up happening was like any single person who was in front of a camera on a red carpet, any person who was on stage doing their sort of like talk back after the film talked about what was happening in Minneapolis. And so it just, Sundance is a special place. God bless RIP Robert Redford. And it felt
Yeah.
fitting that for the last one in Park City, the community showed up for Bob, and
That's
it was
great.
great. It was really
Well,
fun.
we have the Grammys this weekend, so we'll see if the political streak from famous artists continues.
I can't wait to see it. Who's performing? Is Bad Bunny performing?
I'm sure not. I bet they
No.
have a non the
Yeah.
week before Super Bowl, I don't
I
think he's
guess
gonna
that's
then
true. I guess that would
perform
be a
at the
lot.
Grammys. It's
All
usually
right,
written into
Twig.
people's contracts of, like, a certain amount of time before and after you can't perform.
Yeah.
Like Coachella, you can't perform at a certain amount of time
It's like a
before or
blackout,
after.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right,
Um,
man. This has been great.
this has been so
Thanks.
good. Make sure you
See
guys
you later.
subscribe to all the Twig and Jenkins properties: Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. We might bring back the YouTube. We had a new old YouTube and a new YouTube. I don't understand it, but
Yeah.
we might bring back some YouTubes and send us emails, send us ideas. Twig and Jenkins is a production of Culture House and Enfranchisement. And we love you guys. Anything
Thank
else,
you to
Twig?
Elizabeth Wyndham, Erica Anderson, Rachel Najan, Nicole Galewski, Twig and Jenkins podcast at gmail.com. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, guys.